Oh God, it speaks.
It speaks.
Okay.
Okay, so
Uh,
thank you, Lain, for joining us on this life project. Um, so what we're going to be doing today is, talking to Lain about his story, and maybe first we'll just open it up by talking about that you're studying mental health. So maybe you can
yeah.
discuss why you're interested in it and what brought you to studying mental health.
Well, yeah. So I've been in and out of like mental health various services for a very long time. First saw my school counselor at age 11 or something like that, and so I've been filling in and out with counselors and psychologists and psychiatrists since then, and kind of decided a lot of it is a bit rubbish. Very early on, and didn't have the best treatment, and want to change that with like I guess modern peer support and advocacy and that sort of thing. So I want to get into that sort of approach of work, I guess, and change the system for the better, hopefully.
Yeah. Okay, so what is it about the system that you didn't like? Like, because you noticed it from a very early age, right? So what was
Yeah,
it?
they very much treat, I guess because I was like quite a atypical such difficult case in some ways, they very much treat you as a problem to be solved, as opposed to a person with needs who just wants to live a life with some amount of dignity and respect. And I very much felt that from a young age, like even that they weren't like really treating me like a person. It was more just like, okay, you're the problem kid. We need to like fix that. You're not doing your homework, so you have to do your homework. Not looking into like why I wasn't doing my homework, why things are messed up in whatever ways they were.
So was it more just focusing on the behaviors, not?
Yeah,
Mhm.
like very focused on like fixing the problem behaviors or making them go away
Yeah.
more than like finding the root cause or trying to actually help me.
Mm.
It would be teachers being like, "Oh, Lain is bad and blows up in class," as opposed to, "Oh, why is Lain blowing up in class? What's going on here?"
No one asked you the why question. Yeah, yeah. So how did what sort of treatment did they give you at that time? Was it more medication or psychotherapy?
A lot of CBT,
CBT,
a
yeah.
lot of CBT that did very little. A lot of like mindfulness that also did
Mm.
very little. And my rat's playing in the background. That's fine. A lot of I think I started on sleeping pills at one point when I was like 13 because I just had really bad insomnia most of my life. And that went very badly because no one actually gave me good advice to how to take them. And also, you're not meant to take proper sleeping pills when you're 13. Um, this is prescribed by a GP,
Oh,
but it did not go well.
no.
Um, yeah, and just a lot of like a lot of dismissal about my issues until they decided one day I had BPD, which has since been discredited by another psychiatrist. And it's just very like they didn't want to label me with anything, and then suddenly they wanted to label me with the go away diagnosis.
Okay.
The like we'll put you in the box and that's untreatable, so go away now.
Mm.
Um,
So maybe
yeah.
people who are watching this probably don't understand what
Oh yeah.
it is. So maybe you could.
BPD is a personality disorder. It is treated a bit by a lot of. I'll talk more about how it's treated rather than what it is. It's like emotional dysregulation, and you have big emotions basically, and it's hard to manage them. I don't personally have it, but I know quite a few people who do, and it's a like problem, but it's treatable with various kinds of therapy and so on. But a lot of psychiatrists, when they diagnose you with it as a, okay, you're no longer my problem now because I can't do anything. And they kind of put you in the box and then push the box away.
Mm.
And that's not really fair on a, like, I don't know, I was probably 18 at the time or 17 even, and just looking for help and just being like, well, you're not my problem because you've got these 3 letters. And that was not nice.
So did you find um, so wherever you went, they kind of like stigmatized you on that?
Yeah, really, really stigmatized me. Like, I think I got confused a lot because I was experiencing like gender dysphoria and wasn't straight. And there was a lot of like, oh, you know, you're just confused. This is your lack of self-identity problems coming through, or like lack of like stable identity problems coming through. And I'm like, I don't think it is, but okay. And just kind of wandering around. It probably delayed my transition for quite a number of years as well. Having all these doctors be like, well, you're not really trans, you're just confused. It's just the BPD, you know? And yeah, there's a lot of stigma. A lot of like they just didn't want to do anything with me. I had a lot of mistreatment. It was not good.
And how long did that go for? Because you said really from age 11, was it? Right up until...
Yeah, so I took a break from like mental health, everything, like psychology and psychiatry for a while, for a few years. And then when I was 21, 22, I'm 26 now, went and saw a new psychologist, and she was very like holistic based and very like trauma informed and everything else. She's a clinical psychologist. I'm still seeing her now. I think I was 22. Yeah. And I'm still seeing her now, and she's fantastic. And then I also saw a new psychiatrist towards the same time, because I was looking into transitioning gender-wise, and I saw someone who specialized in psychosis, which I was experiencing, and also specialized in gender, which was a convenient little package for me. She sort of took one look at me and took one look at the files, the various like diagnoses that had been given, and went, this is rubbish. I'm going to like treat you from scratch. Because clearly these people have given you this diagnosis after one session, and you can't do that. We're going to take this slow. We're going to work through this problem. And she was great as well, like an actually good psychiatrist, which I find quite hard to find. Yeah, and that improved my sort of like that. So gave me a bit of hope, and maybe this system can have good people in it that want to change the system.
Okay, so it's really, so how old were you in the 20s then, was it?
Yeah, early 20s.
Early 20s, yeah. So how many years ago would that have been? So
about 4 years.
So 4 years. So that's only really then that you mentioned about hope and really getting the...
Yeah, considering I'd been there for about over 10 years.
Yeah.
Of like in and out of the system. Exactly. That's not great.
No, it's not. And like you said, you have to like start again. Like yeah. So so do you find that is it's quite rare to kind of find that real sort of help that you kind of found?
Yeah, especially so with like more complex situations like mine, in that I have both psychosis and then I've got the sort of symptoms of that. It's not quite fully like labeled properly yet. It's somewhere around the schizoaffective spectrum. So a bit of bipolar, a bit of schizophrenia, but not quite meeting any of the boxes right. But so it's somewhere around there. But my psychiatrist doesn't really believe that strongly in labels anyways, except for like, you know, putting on paper.
Yeah.
She's more like, well, we're going to treat you as a person, and these are the problems. If this medication helps these problems for you, that's good, which is what I needed, really.
Yeah. And
then I also have DID, which is dissociative identity disorder, or I'm plural, or however you want to describe that. And the sort of combination of those two things, I think, led to a lot of like just not knowing how to deal with me for a lot of counselors and psychologists, because they'd see unstable identity in that my identity would seem unstable and so on, but it's actually that there were different alters fronting at different times.
So maybe we can talk about, because people probably don't understand about DID or dissociative.
Yeah, no, I'm just getting ahead of myself a bit.
No problem.
Yeah, so basically in the form of it that I have, in that there's many sort of dissociative disorders, and there's varying kinds of like OSDD and so on. They've all got names and it's hard to remember. And there's like that, like ones and A's and so on. I have, how do I explain this in simple terms? In my like self, there's like multiple personalities, I guess, or people. We have decent communication at this point in our lives, in that we can communicate internally as well as externally. And like, I can write notes to them, which is how we started off, but I can also like talk to them internally now through a long time practicing in meditation and other things like that. And during like certain like periods of stress or whatever, or just for certain activities, or just because we want, like someone wants to do something, or a bit of music is played or whatever, an alter will switch out with whoever's currently fronting, as in like piloting the body, and kind of take over, do things for a while, and then someone else will switch in, and we kind of operate as a unit now. It's not very disordered at this point in our lives, but it has been. So it's kind of like, yeah, it's complicated to kind of describe in layman's terms.
But maybe we can talk about, because some people, they don't even understand, or they probably heard about the multiple personalities and seen in kind of like the media, or,
and the media's done a lot for making it seem very scary and bad, and like you want to get rid of it.
Yeah.
So personally, I mean, there's a few methods of like treatment that people go about with DID. The main one people hear about is the final fusion integration type one, which is basically you want to squish everyone back into one person, which is not always a possible thing for every person with like DID or who's plural. It's like sometimes not actually like viably possible in that they've been separate and developed for too long. And sometimes it's just not something that they want to do because they work better as a team through cooperation, communication, and co-consciousness, which is the 3 C's, I think, that like someone came up with, which is kind of where I'm at now. We cooperate, we communicate with each other, we work together for like a goal, which is living a good life and so on.
Okay. And did you work, was it with your current psychiatrist?
Not my psychiatrist, my psychologist. We did a bit of work there. Especially when one of my alters developed PTSD. But it's very strange. You can have like different diagnoses for different alters, and different alters will present with different amounts of mental health issues, or even physical health issues. The brain is a magnificently unknown beast. We don't know how this happens, but it does. But what you'll get is like, so one of my alters has PTSD from a single incident that he experienced. I have, and the system as a whole has like more complex trauma from like various long-term traumas. And my therapist really helped with his Az's, his name is Az, there we go. Az's like PTSD things and like PTSD symptoms. Like he still has PTSD, but it's a lot more managed now. Helps us like, we'd already established some amount of communication before this because we just sort of had to on our own sort of thing. But yeah, she definitely helped like helped us like realize what we each want to do together as like a unit, I guess. So we actually decide on this course together to do mental health, because we realized it's something that we all can do. No matter who fronts. And it'll be better that way than like choosing something that one or two of us have an interest in.
So that's great. So because doing a lot in terms with like kind of ego states and things like that. So actually even every person has kind of different parts to themselves, which we just think there's just like one sort of like self and that. But I like what you're saying, just getting that consensus and engaging, and you mentioned about coming to the course to, rather than having all different parts, or like, fighting with each other to, if you're doing something.
It's very about like cooperation for like the greater purpose of the unit, I guess.
Yeah. So when did because you mentioned like being kind of like in the system since like 11 years old, etc. Did you noticing the DID around then, or has it been?
I've honestly, I've had alters coming and going since I was like as long as I can remember. Really. I definitely developed before the age of 9. I think around the age of 9 is when Az showed up. So he's been here for the longest, like without break.
Yeah.
Otherwise we had sort of like, well, we called them imaginary friends at the time, and then they progressed into like writing or art muses that sort of exist in our head. But they weren't really that. They like, you don't have an art muse that takes over your body for 2 weeks at a time, and you don't remember anything from those 2 weeks. That's not a thing that happens. You don't have imaginary friends do that either, but that was sort of like our explanation for it as a kid. But we've very much always had like some amount of coming and going of alters.
So when did you start maybe acknowledging or realizing that that's, wasn't something to, dismiss or get rid of? Because you're saying you're kind of like understanding.
Yeah, I met someone online actually who had, who was plural. And they'd been talking to their therapist for a while. We got talking about like of some other topic, like a mutual like interest sort of thing. And I talked to a few of their alters, and then I was talking to them about what it was like. I'm like, hey, this actually really resonates with me.
Okay, good.
And I sort of started looking into myself and who was there, and instead of just like, because instead of like hearing them and being like, I'm not going to engage with that, I'd talk back. And we'd have actual conversations on occasion. And it was sort of, it's different from hallucinating. Because I also experience hallucinations. But it's very different to that because it's more internal, I guess. You don't actually hear like
it's not
audibly.
Like
it's not outside. It's inside voices, but you don't control them. They don't feel like you. I think I was probably about maybe 16, 17 when I started like actually trying to acknowledge. I'm probably about 17.
Is that the first time you started engaging with the?
Yeah, properly. Like I'd use them for like role playing and like art stuff and stuff like that at a younger age, but I didn't quite understand what was going on. I'd just be like, the sort of text role playing in forums and stuff that was popular in the early 2000s. We'd do that together, and I'd just be like, oh, this is like this character's turn to write, and we just sort of each take turns writing what we each did as like stories, and interacting with other people or other people's characters, which were actually characters doing this. But I didn't realize that's not how people wrote. So
it's interesting you're talking about like in terms of something like role play or because everyone, when they do drama and things like that, they know there's like a different side part that sort of like takes over, but they just say, oh, it's just, just acting sort of thing. But you can't acknowledge those as another part of me that's
except you have amnesic blocks sometimes with these ones.
That's the thing. Okay, great. So now you said, you mentioned that you're doing advocacy for DID, or so what are you doing?
So I'm working on like writing a few articles and getting a website up and stuff like that about DID. It's been sort of put on hiatus a little bit with studying, because studying takes up a lot of my time. But I'm working on just trying to writing articles about both for people who experience plurality and just realizing that, and like sort of the, oh god, what do I do?
Yeah.
And also for like friends and family, I guess. Because I find there's not that many resources for friends and family and like how to respect people who are plural.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people who experience plurality might want to all use the one name or something. But in like my instance, or our instance, with close friends and family, or not family so much, but close friends, we'd rather people use each other's name if they know who's fronting.
Okay.
In like safe circumstances and so on. Like, you know, Lain's fronting right now, we'll call him Lain. Az is fronting right now, we'll call him Az. Omen's fronting now, that's Omen.
Yeah, so you engage with the altar and rather than just being the person that that presenting, because we all have that presented sort of like stuff we give. This is my specific name, etc. But engaging with that, the altar. So apart from like education and families and all that, what other sort of area?
This is kind of dream sort of stuff, but actually starting to work on educating like professionals about it would be amazing down the line, because the DID specialists aren't very educated in modern DID treatment or anything else in Australia, at least. America, it's a little bit better, because they've got like trauma camps there, for instance, where like people with CPTSD and DID all go and have therapy and so on. It's like inpatient, but specifically for trauma.
Yeah.
Like it's expensive because it's America, but it actually exists. Whereas here, it's sort of all lumped into one thing, and a lot of places won't take you if you have DID. There's a lot of discrimination still if you've got DID. A lot of people will tell you not to address them as people, but address them as parts, or that sort of thing, which I disagree with, because I don't feel like they're parts of me, because I'm like, we're parts of this entity, like overall, that you said is standing before you, but I'm just as much a part of that as Omen is, and my other alters are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't see the difference between me and as being like vast, and I'm more of a person than he is, or anything like that.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people struggle to think that. They think it's like I think that was the whole confusion specifically with multiple personalities, etc. Almost like completely separate self, but you're kind of saying it's all a collective kind of self. Different.
Like the body is the collective.
Yeah.
And everyone else is completely, like, I'm completely separate from Az, completely separate to Omen, completely separate to Alia, so on and so forth. There's 6 of us, but that doesn't really matter. We're separate as the 6 of us, but together we work together to present like a unit to the outside world. Yeah.
So as a unit, it's a great sort of point. And I like how you mentioned how you, as a unit, you kind of like wanting to study the course of health. So it's obviously something that you're really sort of like passionate about and you want to focus in.
Like we all are.
Yeah.
Except like Max, but Max is a child.
Okay.
Max just wants dinosaurs and Legos. So
different needs.
Yeah.
But, so what would you like to do? So obviously you're doing the advocacy with DID and maybe working, educating professionals, families, etc. What sort of area also that you're hoping to get into, like especially after you finish the course, and then maybe we can finish up by talking about what you would like others to kind of like know to learn about.
Yeah. So I guess when I finish the course, like anything peer support to do with either queer or LGBTQIA plus folks, or psychosis or DID would be amazing to start with. I don't think there's much for DID. Yeah, I think that's more job creation.
Yeah.
But psychosis or LGBTQIA plus so peer support would be amazing. Like the intersection of that and mental health and everything, because I think peer support is where I'd really flourish.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of, I have the lived experience and I want to help people advocate for themselves and also help advocate for them.
Yeah, that's a great place to start. And then, like you said, maybe the DID can kind of like come to like later. Yeah, it's another sort of area.
It's more job creation, especially in Australia.
Yeah.
Because we're a bit behind a lot of the world for that.
Yeah. All right. So so thanks for like sharing that and explaining that. And I'm hoping people will learn quite a lot, especially about your experience in DID. Yeah. Is there anything you want to maybe just for people to kind of know?
I guess just try and keep in mind that not just because you've met a system or someone DID or someone who's plural doesn't mean you've met everyone who is a system or has DID or is plural. Like my experience will be vastly different to someone else's experience, because honestly the like DSM-5 isn't that great at the description of it, and it's all a bit there's a lot of wiggle room in there, and plurality itself like there's so many types of plurality really that exist. Like there's sort of people who have lots and lots of alters who sort of fuse together and work together, and they'll have like 5 people fronting at a time just to coordinate everything. It's sort of like not quite like whole personalities, but just kind of like little fragments, I guess. Like I think the term is polyfragmented. So you've got that, for instance, or you've got like people like me, who's like a small system, or my system, which is a small system, and we all sort of like individually do our own things. There's just such a big world. There's also people who don't identify with DID at all and just say that they're plural, and they believe that they're plural for spiritual reasons. Like there's a lot of different aspects to this, and that's really important to remember that not just because you've met me doesn't mean you've met all of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And because my experience is different, it doesn't mean it's wrong or someone else's is wrong.
Yeah, and I think the old sort of belief was either you got to fuse integrate everything, or we got to remove it, and
and that's not true at all. Like some people do want to integrate and do the final fusion thing, or they want to integrate and fuse to a small system, but that's not everyone. I think the last study I read on it actually showed like a really minuscule amount, like 15% stayed fused over a 5-year period, or something like that. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was like not a substantial amount stayed fused. And it's just not viable for everyone. Like if you want to do that with your therapist, go ahead, do that. But just beware, it's not the only solution, and people should know that's not the only solution that people are aiming for. Don't assume it is.
Yeah, and I think what you mentioned, just training everyone individually and rather than assuming everyone act the same sort of way in that. Yeah, so I think you're talking about being that really client-centered, person-centered, and just really engaging with the person.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to take into account like what the individual or individuals in the system want, because like they might have different pronouns to each other. They might have different ages. We have a child. You don't treat them like an adult. That you will traumatize them further. We have different like genders in here. We just decided the best solution, like we decided as a whole to transition to male, like physically, I guess, because that worked better for more of our identities and so on. Like, but we decided as a whole. Like it's don't expect like everyone to be the same gender or everyone to be have something in common, you know.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that and having,
Rambly.
yeah. No, it's perfectly good. It's very educational and I learned a lot as well. So hopefully
Excellent.
people watching this will also learn and like you said, yeah, work with the individual and not have those preconceived like notions of of what the idea is or what the person's like going through on that. Okay, so thanks again, Lain, and
All good.
yeah, thank you.